Here we are, we're back, episode 2. Hopefully you guys tuned in, caught episode 1. Great nuggets, definitely sitting on there. Gems sitting on there from episode 1. If you haven't seen episode 1, like I said, you got to go back and check it out. Episode 2, kind of deep diving on a topic. We just literally picked the topic out, said this is what we want to cover today. You'll hear about it in a second. Definitely giving you an outlook on just who we are and kind of what we deal with. But yeah, man, I think just rolling into this, I know you just came off a little hiatus or a random, not really random, a well-needed hiatus, kind of took a day off.
Yes.
I'm reaching in for mine. I know I need one coming up here soon. But yeah, what does that look like? Like just for coaches, athletes, trainers, like what does that look like for us as trainers and coaches to take a day off? How needed is that? How needed is that for a break for a coach?
It's so necessary. I can just think back to when I first started. You kind of adopt that no days off, that grind mentality, right? You working just
Wale,
right? You just working like weeks and weeks and weeks without taking time off. Physically, you feel fine, but I think it's more the mental part. You're not as sharp as you want to be, and it's just you're kind of just like there. I think my kids, they've been really good about this because I think that if I'm not there, I'm not, giving them what they want. But they've been really good about, take a day off. Like, you're good, because they see that we do so much, especially when the college kids are home. It's an all day affair because the college kids got to come in. You got to be on point, right? You got to be on point, and then they're like, you get to go home, don't you? I'm like, no, I still got the high school kids and the middle school kids coming in later. And, you got to make sure that when you're doing it, and this is something I try to keep in mind, no matter if it's your 4th or 5th session of the day, that kid has been looking forward to coming that day. So you got to make sure you stay on point. And got to match it. It's got to be just like it's my first session because it's their first session. So that's important, man. Taking those days off and really recharging, it's necessary.
Nah, for sure. I think so. What does that look like for you? A day off. What is Shannon doing on a day off?
Nothing.
Wake up.
Nothing.
Boom.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Unless I got something playing like with the fam or with the boys. Like it is literally nothing. Like the kids make fun of me. They're always calling me out because I'll watch a game in complete silence on mute.
Yeah.
No, nothing. It's just playing in the background because we're so overstimulated all day. You got music going, you got to talk to people, and you never really just have time for quiet. So listen, my spot is like the quietest place on the planet.
Come on now.
Because it
dark, keep the room dark.
The lights is barely on.
The recovery.
The shades are down, like nothing, man. I just need that, and it's so good just to like have that nothingness. It's so imperative. What's yours like?
For sure. I mean, for me, man, it's the no days off mentality just switches over, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I'm married, got a kid, so day off is definitely like fam time, but it's recharging though. You know what I'm saying? Like it's definitely a recharge. May wake up a little later. I'm normally like an early bird to go work out and stuff like that, but like I may sleep in. And it's just playing. I think for me, the biggest thing when I take a day off is trying to be where my feet are, be present. And that's so hard to do for something that you love. I think just putting an analogy to it that I used with one of my athletes before. It's like, just imagine like, okay, we love what we do. That's the same way everybody loves ice cream. A lot of people love ice cream, but if you eat ice cream every day, eventually you're going to need a break. Same way we could push, like Shannon could push 20 days, 21 days straight of just training. But at the same time, at some point, like just the monotonous of it is just going to be like, all right, I need to recharge, bro. Like I need to just recharge. I need to take a break from the ice cream and just kind of get myself together so I can come back, and that hunger for wanting more comes back. You know what I mean? So I think for me, it's just hard. That's what I struggle with the most. Just in life in general, is just trying to be present, be where my feet are, and I've been working on it. That was one of my big things for 2025 is just, all right, work on being more present, being where your feet are, because I could be at home, I'm like, man, this is an off day. I just need to get my mind off of just training and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, you know what? I got an idea though. Like maybe I could do, woo, woo, woo. I'm like, no, just shut it down. Just chill out. And even for you, like just hearing like, okay, you're watching a game, but I already know where Shannon's mind goes when you're watching a game. It's just like, oh, I'm taking this back to the lab. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's still a good recharge. So I don't want to make it sound like it's not a good recharge. But yeah, man, it's definitely needed if you're a coach or trainer out here watching. And I think the early on grind stage, like you may have to sacrifice and push for a couple more days than you need to. But definitely if you can get to that point where it's like, all right, now just reset. It's going to take you so much further and have you a lot more sharper in the sessions. Attention to detail is really big. So just when you find yourself, you feel yourself starting to slack a little bit, or whatever that looks like, whether it's like an energy standpoint or whatever, and nobody else may be able to notice. But when you start feeling yourself going there of like, all right, like my energy was way different session 1 to session 4, session 5. It's like, man, look, I gotta figure this out. I gotta get this reset set. Because like you said, that kid coming in for their first session, that's their first session. So you got to match that energy. It should feel like for you, it's the first session. So that you're being the exact same trainer that you are every time.
Yeah, man. And to kind of touch on that about, you know, that energy and keeping the same mental focus. My kids know I demand a lot. And they bought into that. So it's not like a toxic type thing, but there's accountability both ways. If I'm expecting you to be accountable, then I'll give them that grace to hold me accountable. There's a couple of them, they've been around for a while. We kind of have like our thing, right? If they notice I'm a little off, they'll just walk by and be like, yo, lock in. And I already know what that means. So that means I'm not as sharp or as focused as I need to be on the present task. And, you know, it's good to have that accountability, man, and to have that space where everybody's accountable to each other. Because, I mean, that's just what life's about.
No, that's real. And then I think that touches too on like your humility of just being willing to be like letting a younger athlete hold you accountable. Like some of these kids could be easily your kids or like younger siblings. And it's just like, okay, for them to actually like check you and say like, hey, lock in, coach, or whatever that looks like. It's like, okay, for you not to get in your emotions or to pull the adult flag out and just a card out and just say like, oh, you can't tell me like lock in on this next drill or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like you can really just blow it up, but it's just taking that to heart and just saying like, all right, I love my athletes and I know my athletes know me. Like I'm going to take that, like just take it in and just, all right, respect. Like I need to lock in more and then deal with that how you need to deal with it. It says a lot about like who you are, is just being willing to do that. I don't think a lot of trainers or coaches are willing to do that. I'm definitely still in that one.
Yeah, nah, take it, bro.
Hey, tell my kids, hey man, look, listen, if y'all see Rose starting to slack, let me know.
Well, that's just how you keep the product good, for lack of a better term.
Right. Oh, 100%.
Right. So if I'm allowing them to slack and they allow me to slack, then what does that look like overall? Right. And no one's getting what. Right. We're all wasting time and nobody's getting what they should get out of it. So I'd rather it be like that than the other way around, and then hope for something to come out of it. You know what I mean?
Right. 100%. 100%. Episode 2. That was as always, unscripted. We're just talking. It wasn't the main talking point. We have a big one that we want to talk about on this episode. I mean, it sticks out. It's obvious, right? You have two black men talking on women's lacrosse, which is not common. We're not gonna sit here and act like it's just a normal thing. But just, I'll let you go first. Just talking about some of the things that you deal with, not necessarily from all the way negative, but like positive, negative things. Like what's that feel like being a black man in the women's lacrosse or just being in the lacrosse world?
Yeah, man, it's an interesting position to be in, just because, like you said, there's not a lot of us, and so we don't have a ton of examples to pull from that aren't necessarily like trailblazers, so to speak. So it's interesting being kind of in the forefront of that. But I do want to say my experience overwhelmingly has been extremely positive. So this isn't like one of those woe is me type things, because there's some people that rock with me heavy, overwhelmingly, and the support I get from the kids and their families, and then just online, like everywhere, it's been overwhelmingly positive. So I'm going to stress that from the beginning. But there's also little bits and pockets of things that may go on. And if I call it, if we were less intelligent, we could call it racism, but I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to call you just being kind of ignorant to just how things evolve. And, there could be the possibility that someone who looks like us who could make an impact on this sport. And, what do we always talk about in this game, right? Grow the game, grow it, right?
Grow it.
So what exactly does that look like? Are people more, inviting to, people that look like me and you that are coming into this sport? Because, we may not have played it, but I think our perspective and what we do bring to it is very valuable.
Right. And I think it's a respect for it too, right? Like, we respect it. Like, it's not like we're just out here, hey, go do this, do that. It's like, nah, like, study the game, understand the game, respect the game, get insight from those. And I'm pretty sure you have players that you may have reached out to, or they kind of threw things back and forth with you and like, oh, okay, like, just learning the game more and more so you can help grow it. Like you said, I think to be able to grow the game from our perspective and how we look is going to help boost the game, right? Like, it's just going to help elevate, because now you have some people, I think, that may look like us, may not look like us, but when they see a SHAN, like they see you on there doing something, it's like, oh, let me stop and look at this video. Let me see what he's talking about, right? And then if you're obviously respecting the game, teaching the game the correct way, then it's like, oh man, this is super dope. Like, I've never seen a black guy going over lacrosse or talking lacrosse the way he's talking about it. And like I said, 100% just backing what you said, the love and support that we get from all races, not just saying a particular race, but just across the board has been nothing but love across the board. But I think it was more or less of bringing this up was just the elephant in the room, right? Like, it's two black guys talking about lacrosse. So it's just, for us, some people may wonder like, oh, I wonder what they go through. Do they have anything, like you said, not necessarily, you can call it, it's racist. Like, do they have to deal with racism within the coaching aspect of it? I think from a player standpoint, there's actually, just jumping all around a little bit, like when I have a player that literally he's considering hanging up the game of lacrosse. Great athlete, plays D mid, he's great, right? But he's considering hanging up the stick because he's dealing with so much racism within games, to the point where he feels like he's going to get out of character one day, right? Like, he's going to just lose it. And before he does that, he's like, I would just step away from the game, something that I love. He's a football kid as well, but he's like, I'm willing to step away from this game that I love if it's going to cause me to show a characteristics that I'm not truly. And I told him, like, we've been talking back and forth about it with spring coming up, school ball coming up. Been talking back and forth with him, trying to push him to go play and just learn how to deal with that, right? Like, what that looks like for him. And I think it's something that we won't experience, not only because we didn't play the game, we've felt racism in our sports before. I know, just growing up, I'm pretty sure you dealt with it. But this is a new generation too. So the trash talk now and the things that go on now is just completely different than what we dealt with. You know what I'm saying? And I tell our parents all the time, like, you got to understand, like, Snapchat, Instagram, especially Snap, like, that's a whole different world it's like a hidden world that we would never know about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just from how kids operate on it. So it could be like racial slurs or something going on, and it may never come to the surface of where we would see it, but every kid in the school knows about it. Every kid in the county knows what that kid called that other kid, or synced that video, or just whatever. It gets really crazy. And it can be a lot from a mental standpoint. Then that kind of taps into the mental health side of things, right? And I think that's more the approach that he's taking, is just like, for my mental health, I will step away from this game before it causes me to just spaz out or whatever it looks like. But it's definitely there. I mean, for us to say like racism doesn't exist, and not just lacrosse, in the sports world in general, that's not true. You know what I mean? Like, we see it all the time. Certain times it pops up, but it's all about how you handle it when it occurs, and just remember the bigger picture of why you're doing it. And just try to remain positive. See the positive in the negative, right? Don't always just focus on the negative part of it, and just try to continue just advancing forward as a person and as an athlete.
Absolutely. Nah, you hit it right in the head, man. It's like you said, and to kind of touch on that social media aspect, like we didn't have that growing up. So, per se, when you left the situation, it was done. But now these kids go home and it could be a DM they receive, it could be a Snapchat they receive, it could be something wrote somewhere where we'll never see it, but they're still having to deal with it. And that, I tell these kids all the time, like I give them so much credit, and I give their parents so much credit for, raising good kids, because in this day and age, you have it's so hard, and being around this a lot, you see how little parents actually get to be parents, because these kids got school, and then they go school to practice, and then practice to whatever, and then they got their whole extracurricular life, and you may never see your parent until 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then by that time
to shut it down, start it over.
Right, trying to do it all over again.
Yeah, nah, for sure. And it's just the exposure too. Like, I think when the social media wave was starting off, it was a lot easier to, like, okay, if I didn't want my kid to be on social media, I could keep it away.
Yeah.
Where now, like, even if you don't let a kid get a social media page to high school or whatever that looks like, you have other middle schoolers during lunch break, during whatever, showing the kid that doesn't have an Instagram page, showing them things. And now that's a whole nother world. Like, it's a whole different realm of things that you're going down, because now they're exposing your kid to something that maybe you should have, to kind of teach them what's right and what's wrong. Now you have somebody showing them, like, hey, watch this video, and not giving them the explanation of that's not right, this isn't what you're supposed to do. But here you are, it's like, oh, my kid doesn't have an Instagram page. Yeah, but they're watching Johnny's IG page during lunch break for an hour every day, and they're watching insane stuff that they have no business watching. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's really tough to raise a kid in this generation. And for me, like, I got a daughter, she's 3. I'm just like, bro, I just pray every day. Like, I don't know what this is gonna look like by the time she hits like 17, 16. Social media, just all of that stuff, man. So it is definitely big ups to our parents, raising great kids, because I definitely have great kids that I come across, very respectful, do the right things whether somebody's watching or not, and that's big. And I think just even us, the kids that aren't doing as well, that I wouldn't say they're not great kids, but the kids that are just like floating that borderline, I think that's where we are able to step in, right? Replacing that time that parents aren't with them, to kind of coach them up on, like, hey, what's right, what's wrong? Because you know how it is, like, the training facility where we train at is more than just getting better physically, right? It's mentally, I mean, just touching on that, like, I mean, these kids, the emotional support you can have for these kids, because they're able to open up, right? If they're going through something, sometimes they do need an outside opinion besides their parents, because some kids don't listen to their parents. All kids don't listen to their parents. Bailey, she's 3 and she's not listening to me like she should be. But at that point, that's when you got to just trust you're putting the right village around your kid to help them navigate through life, right? So they have a question, like, I have no doubt in my mind that Shan's going to give them the right answer, or Rose's going to give them the right answer if they ask them about a specific topic, whether that's life or sport. So that's the bigger picture, man. Absolutely, like, building great athletes, but at the same time building great people to take on this world and be in this society.
Yeah, man. I remember something a mentor of mine said to me, some years ago, because he coaches soccer. And he's another sport where we're not really prevalent, at least in the United States. He said, you always got to be mindful of, the area you're in. They may not have had that many interactions with a Black person, and you may be their only interaction. She said, you always have to be mindful of that. And, there's certain narratives and stereotypes that exist out there, and I just try my best not to be that, whatever they may think, because they see me
100%.
And they're like, oh, that's just Shannon, but they don't know anybody else outside of me. And I try to always make them mindful of that, and make myself mindful of that. And to kind of touch on that point of offering advice and whatnot, these kids trust me with, like, everything, man. It's crazy how, like, the relationships grow over time. And it's like a running joke with a brother and sister that I have. They'll be talking about something amongst their family, and the mom will always be like, well, what does Shannon think? And
That's crazy. Shan's in the family, man.
Right. So it's like, you know,
Shan?
they get that advice from the parents, but there's also stuff that they can't talk to their parents about. And that's kind of
Right.
where we step in. It's like, all right, yes, I've been there. I completely understand what you're going through. Not the same, but the same, if you catch my drift. Because our experience as young black men and their experience as a young white or young, you know, white male are completely different. But in some theory, we could still give them some advice on what that may look like and how to navigate it.
100%. And I think too, when it comes down to just overwhelming emotions over a certain situation, I think as humans, like we all feel the same emotions, you know what I mean? So like this kid, this may be a young white girl and she's comes from a wealthy family and she's going through whatever, like whatever her issue is, if she's feeling depressed about that situation, depression is real regardless if you're talking to a young black girl in the hood and she's dealing with something else. If she feels depressed about that, two completely different situations, but the emotions as humans are the same. So I think the coping mechanism and just us stepping in to kind of help out when they do come to a session or whatever that looks like, it needs to be handled the same way and respected the same way. I think sometimes just talking from a black point of view, I think sometimes you may see like, oh, she's fine. Like she's a white girl, she's all right. And it's just like the more and more you deal with athletes, and we know that we deal with like white athletes, bro, they go through stuff. It's real. Like when they hear the story, sometimes when they open up to me, I'm like, wow, like this is deep. You know what I mean? So it's just having that respect to understand, like you said, I don't know how it is to be a white girl in America. I don't know. But at the same time, I know that emotion that you're feeling. I'm like, like this is the way that I would handle this, right? To help you get through this. And that's just something that you can never take for granted. You know what I mean? Just to even have the opportunity that they're willing to open up to us and we don't look like them. Like for them to open up to say, hey, like this is going on, that's going on. Like, Shannon, what do you think about this? And just for you, it's like, that's your platform of like, okay, this can alter this girl's life. You know what I mean? Like from a positive or negative standpoint, depending on how you approach it. And that's something you just don't take for granted. Never.
Yeah.
So.
And it's actually helped my communication skills, like overall, I would say. Because, you know, these kids, they do exactly what you say. So you got to just make sure you articulate that the best. But I kind of, you know, I always lead in with this. I'm like, okay, do you want me to make you feel good or do you want the best advice possible for the situation?
Right.
Because those two things are...
Do you need to vent?
Yeah, those two things are definitely not the same. So do you just need to get this off? Or do you really want me to tell you, okay, this is how you should think about approaching it? But, you know, some of it, they got to just like live it out. And I tell them that. Like I can give you all the advice in the world.
You got to go through it.
You got to go through it. It's part of your story.
You gotta be strong.
Some of the stuff you can't avoid. Like at all.
Right. Nah, for sure. Damn, it's all deep stuff, man.
Yeah.
Deep stuff.
So let's hit let's hit on, you know, some of your experiences, you know, being a black man, some things you've run into. So I know I have to admit, everybody, this is my fault. We had to re-record. My mic went out last time, so we got to run it back.
All good.
But
hey, we're running it back.
We got into some good topics.
Nah, we did. So yeah, just one. I mean, so I grew up in the South. I'm in the South now, and I think this is always good too for us. Is like, all right, your point of view being more up north, me being more down south, but then people finding that common ground between like what we kind of experience. So for me, growing up in the South, my high school, which they just made the change maybe a couple years ago, I went to Parkwood High School and our mascot was a rebel. That was our mascot. So like Confederate flag, full nine. And this is the crazy part, like Confederate flag is not always a sign of racism by any means. Like I have some friends that are heavy behind that Confederate flag and they're just like, hey, redneck, crazy, but they love me to death. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll go to bat for them, they'll go bat for me. So it's more or less of what they stand for is the ones that stand for behind the wrong thing, right? Slavery and just everything from that aspect. So you get at my school, like you got the both of them kind of intertwined, you know what I mean? So definitely racist remarks, being picked on for just your nose, your mouth, like your lips, just all crazy sorts of stuff, just wild stuff. The N-word thrown around like nothing. It's just like, all right, how to handle that. Like you let teachers know sometimes, and you have some that try to do the right thing, and then you may have some that just kind of like, like a little slap on the wrist for that kid, and it just keeps pushing. I think they kind of handle it different ways now, just because how relevant and how much everything's pushing on the Black culture of just trying to make things right. I think some teachers do take a better approach about it. But back in the day, it was just kind of like, hey, slap on the wrist. Hey, you shouldn't have said that. Go over here or whatever.
Don't do it again.
Like, dang. But don't do it again. It's like, bro, that was racist, bro. And then the time if I threw something out racist, or one of my friends threw something back at them racist, like sometimes things will get handled completely different, like out of school 3 days. And it's just like, bro, what happened? But yeah, so I mean, when I was coming out of high school, this was back in 09, telling our age, crazy. Back in 09 though, I think Obama was getting ready to go into office. And for us, like, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Like, you had a Black president, like a Black guy running for president. It's like, oh, that's dope. That's cool. But once he got elected at my school, bro, things shifted and went crazy left. Like with people that I thought I was truly friends with were saying things that I'm like, wow, so if you view him that way, how do you view me? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it was just, like, I'm not having a Black man run me, or just like whatever. It's like, that's how you view it. And just like, I mean, throwing the N-words, it was crazy, bro. So it was just like, that was a time that I think just kind of sticks out to me the most, was just like when that kind of went down. I think as Black people in America, I think everybody can kind of relate to something that went down, or where you kind of seen true colors when Obama did step into office. And it was hurtful. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I was kind of pissed about like the remarks they were saying, but it was more hurtful than anything, just to be like, dang, like, I thought we were really close. I thought we were friends. And you can't come back and tell me like, no, that's not the way I feel about you. It's just about him. It's like, nah, like, I look like him. So what are you saying? You know what I mean? So it was crazy though. Definitely some crazy times in the sports world, school and all that. Yeah. But
touch on that.
What you run into?
Touch on that, because I think this is good. Touch on that. When I think you had a clinic somewhere, and a lady.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, see, bro, Rose memories horrible, trash. But yeah. So obviously, like, traveling around doing the Dodge City stuff, nothing but love everywhere I go. So inviting. Obviously, like, I don't look like a lot of the athletes that I'm training. Sometimes I may be the only African-American there, you know what I mean? And if I'm not, then it's like an African-American girl, one or two maybe. But long story short, I was at a location. I was bringing my bag out. I was walking to the field. And I was walking beside like this mom and her daughter, and kind of like merged at the same time. You know what I mean? So kind of boom, walked together. And this mom, she said, hey, like, I'm here my daughter's here for the lacrosse clinic, dodging or something. She tried to describe what she was there for. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm Coach Rowe. Nice to meet you. Like, I'm friendly. Oh yeah, I'm running the clinic today. Nice to meet you. And she was like, oh, you're running it? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. I'm running the clinic today. Like, yes. And it was such just like, it was very awkward. You know what I mean? Just like, okay, I don't know if that was like a really kind of racist, like stereotypical remark. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I know I don't look like lacrosse, but at the same time, it's kind of that undertone, like how she kind of went about it. If I was like another race or looked a certain way, would have been just like, oh, okay. Like, and you just push along. But it was kind of like the question, like, oh, you're running it? And I didn't really go there. I didn't go there at all. I let it go, kind of like, yeah, I'm running it. But in my head, I'm like, what do you mean, am I running it? Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? But that goes back to kind of talking what we talked the one time too, is just like how, and you kind of touched on it earlier, it's just like, all right, how we're an example for, and we're representing Black coaches, Black trainers, or whatever that looks like in the lacrosse world, just in the sports world in general. So you have to conduct yourself a proper way. You know what I mean? You can't, and that's humans in general. Like, you can't always lash out the first thought that comes to your head or just act off emotions. But definitely the way that we walk, we can't afford to have slip ups, right? Because if I would have went off on that lady, like, everybody in my corner that knows Coach Rowe would have been like, oh, that lady must have pissed Rowe off. But for people that don't know, it was like, oh, there's the angry Black guy kind of just lashing off on a white woman. You know what I mean?
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, it's just like, it's real. And I think just growing up, my mom, single mom, it's just a conversation that's always been had. It's just like, hey, you have to conduct yourself a proper way, like at all times, at any times. And just as I continue to elevate, like in my football career and just everything I was doing, even with the business, I always got to remind myself, like, okay, if I go out, hanging out with friends, or me and my wife go out, or whatever it looks like I have to understand that I'm representing Dodge City, I'm representing RoPro. So you can't have a mess up, because it can take 30 years for us to build this thing up. And because of how we look, one slip up and everything's gone. Like something can be gone really quickly. You know what I mean? So it's just, and it's a hard rebound. It's more of a hard rebound for us than others. And it's just facts. If you mess up, you slip up, then it's like, all right, especially if you have an influence and you're dealing with other races too, how we are, we're not just in our culture, then it can be very, very hard jab to you. And it's just like, oh man, how do I recover? I just messed up one time, but the world doesn't want to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's 100% right, man. Like, you said a lot there. I'm just processing all that, because I can attest to all that, because we have to work twice as hard, if not 3 times as hard, to get the same amount of praise. And then, like you said, one little slip up, or even if we react to something that justifiably so we should be reacting to, it turns into see, and you know how people are. They're so quick to spread something negative rather than something positive, and then people that don't know you could be looking at you completely different, and that's not even who your character is.
Oh, at all.
So
at all.
I don't think people understand that part of it too, especially when we already gotta go through hoops, but especially when you lie about a black man, we get it double, because people already have their preconceived ideas of who we are, or what we stand for. So
100%. And I think for us too, just talking like off you and just how you carry yourself, and then how I carry myself, like we carry ourselves as like part of the culture too. You know what I mean? Like dreads, J's, like, I mean, we look like the stereotypical black man, right? That you may see on TV or whatever. So it's definitely alarming. But then once you get to know me, or once you get to know Shannon, it's like, oh, like they're not all like that. In your head, like I know they would never say, some of them would never say that. It's just like, oh, you're not, like, you're really a great person. It's like, yeah, I'm a great person. But it's setting the tone too for other people that look like us. Like you can be for the culture and carry yourself a proper way, to break through, to kind of just elevate what you're doing as a person, which would elevate the culture and everything else behind it. So it's just, we just got to be, you can carry yourself how you want to, but it's just making sure that when you open your mouth, that first time, that first impression, everything about you says professionalism, and they got to see through the colors.
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback off that, I just remember back when I grew up going to city schools, but then I transferred to a suburban school for middle school and high school. And I remember when I first got there, obviously, like, I'm one of like 6 black kids in the whole school. So it wasn't many of us to begin with. So again, that was a culture shock. But growing up, one of my best friends, still to this day, he's white. And I used to go over his house all the time, and it just wasn't any different, whether I was at home or at their house. But going out there, obviously you deal with stuff, people calling you all sorts of names. And I remember I had to have my locker switched out because people kept scribbling stuff like in my locker, which was like insane.
That's wow.
But then once you get to know people, they see you cool. And just so happens, I can't imagine if I actually was bad at sports, what that interaction would be. But once they find out that you can help them, like, oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
We got Shannon. Shannon's cool.
Yeah, Shannon's cool.
A little bit, got a little hedge around.
Yeah, you got a little, right? You got a little leeway. And then once you start, developing relationships, you probably heard it too. Oh, you act white, or you act like this, or you don't act like, you don't act black. And I actually remember one day, okay, you don't think I act black, so what is a black person supposed to act like? And then they just kind of like looked at me like, oh shoot. Then I say, exactly. So you have this idea of what we're supposed to be, because I don't have, my pants are sagging off my behind. I'm not talking in all sorts of slang. Like, I wasn't raised that way. My grandmother, my mom, my dad, they did not raise me like that. They raised me to be very respectful to adults and to carry myself in a certain way. So it just goes back to that perception that people may have. And then once they get to know, it's like, oh my God. And I and I hate this. I understand what people mean, but I just, like, one of the compliments I just do not like is, oh, you're so well spoken. Like, and
how did you think I was going to talk?
I just kind of look at him like, what does that? And I know what they mean, but how it comes off to us, because we hear that so much. That's crazy.
It is wild. Yeah. It's wild.
And then, kind of tie that all to the lacrosse part, especially when people meet me or have met me for the first time. It's kind of like, oh, did you play lacrosse? And I'm like, no.
Oh, that's the go-to.
Yeah, that's kind of like the, and it's not asking like in an inquisitive way. And it's like, well, how do you know so much about it? And I kindly say, just because I didn't play it doesn't impact my ability to learn. Right. Figure out a nice way.
When the athletes, I was gonna say, I didn't mean to cut you off. When the athletes ask me, like, if I'm traveling somewhere to go train, and the athletes ask me, I think most of the time they're enamored by how detailed we're talking. Like, some of the athletes would be like, bro, like, did you play? And I'll be like, nah, I'll throw something wild out. Like, I always just mess around. Like, one location, I might be like, nah, I played badminton at Yale. And just like to mess with them, like, wait, what? Are you serious? And just have them like walk off the water break thinking about it. And then some of them will ask, like, bro, did you play? And I'm like, yeah, I played at Johns Hopkins, graduated 13. And they're like, wait, really? And I'm like, nah, I like just messing with the kids. Yeah. But like on the adult side, like, especially if you're not, the kids kind of make sense to a certain degree at times, because it's like, okay, they're in a full session, and if you're just talking so super detailed on movement of the game, then it's like, Shannon, did you play? Because like, a lot about the game. But if you're just like the adult, like kind of hanging back, not listening, not seeing, or whatever, or that's the first question that pops up, like you're saying, like, hey, do you play lacrosse? Then that is a crazy one just to lead off, because it's like, all right, what are we saying?
What are we really saying here? Are you trying to question what I know, or are you truly genuinely curious that if I played or not?
And for the people watching this that are like, all right, what are y'all saying here that may still be lost? All we're saying is like, okay, if I was a white male and your kid came to me to train, first time I met them ever, they came to me to train, would you ask the same question out the gate? Hey, did you play lacrosse? If not, that's where the issue is lying. That's where we're just saying, all we're saying is like, the issue lies in the way that we look, is what you're kind of attesting to right out the gate of, especially leading off with the question like, hey, did you play lacrosse? You wouldn't, if I didn't look this way, you wouldn't. You would just get your kid, hey, nice to meet you, boom, boom. All right, hope you guys have a great session, and let it go.
Right.
That's all we're saying. We're not saying like, we're just saying if that thought process is completely different. Now, if you're a parent or a kid, if everybody that I approach and I say, hey, do you play lacrosse? That's cool. That's your swag. That's what you do every time. That makes sense. But if you're only doing it with Shannon, or you only did it with Roe, and that was the only time ever you question a coach if they played the game before a session or whatever it looks like, we got to kind of ask some questions.
Bingo.
You know what I mean? we're just asking some questions. That's it. That's all we're saying.
Because I can guarantee you, if they were dropping them off at, let's say this was a more basketball or football focus, would you ask those same questions? You would just drop them off, and you probably just be, all right, I'll be back in 30 minutes or whatever it may be. It makes
sense. That looks right.
Right, exactly.
That looks right. That just kind of let it go.
Apart. But then,
looked apart.
I just remember this was last winter or the winter before. And I think Erin Kuykendall was in the gym. And me and her just, like, if you listen to me and her talk, like, it's like, we just go deep, and then I start getting her thinking a different way. She's like, all right, so what about this? Right. This is like it's truly like a coach-player dynamic.
Right.
And it's so cool. Maybe we can get her on here. But
got to. Aaron, pull up. Let's go. We need you on, bro.
because I know you ain't.
Hey, did she Is she going with Boston? Is she with Boston?
New York. She lives in Boston,
No,
but
New York,
she's,
New York, New
she's
York.
on the New York team.
Oh, got you.
But we were talking about something. It had something to do with the pick and roll, and then it just like went off into like this tangent into something else. And then there was like a high school kid there, and the look in their face was just like holy, I didn't know you guys talk like this. I'm like, yeah, like how do you think? Like for her at her level, it's less to do with how much weight is on the bar, but it is literally more tactical more than anything. And people are very surprised when I actually talk about it, and they're like, "Oh wow, you act." And they're like, "Oh yeah, you actually do know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Well, maybe if you didn't have that preconceived idea before you went in to it, but now I don't deal with that too much anymore. Now the conversations are, I already know what you're about. I'm dropping my kid off.
Yeah, a lot of people know.
My kid off tomorrow. We're getting started. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And now you're saying it like that. Yeah, that was a lot of these things happen like at the beginning, the start. But now you kind of getting around a little bit. People notice a little bit. Showing face. It's kind of like, oh yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Oh, that's the guy. You know what I'm saying? So, nah, for sure. But yeah, man, that's all just real stuff. We just kind of wanted to address the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? Just kind of talk on it a little bit.
Everybody that showed love, we
our thoughts.
Appreciate it so much. Like truthfully.
Come on now.
Just want to put that out
city
there.
City girls know how I feel about them. All of them. City boys, all of them, man. Nah, it's all love. It's all love for sure.
Everyone, thank y'all for tuning in. We seriously thank you guys taking the time out, listening to us, share our stories. Come back, like, subscribe, share. Anything y'all want us to talk about, hit us up. Follow us at @ShanBreezy_ at Dodge City.
Drop comments too. Like, drop the comments. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. We know the season's coming up. That's a whole deep dive segment that we can go into. What are matchups y'all looking for? Athletes that you think is going to pop it off on the scene. Just let us know, man. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about next. And we keep saying it. This is the second episode. We got to get our special guest on here. We got to get guests on. Just to hear some talks.
Yeah, for sure.
Deemer. Let's go, Deem. That's it, man. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll catch y'all.